Hey friends, it's Robin. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing another round of recent reads. We are slowly but surely catching up, so hopefully we won't be doing January books in March, but I have 10 more books to talk about today, so let's get right into the wrap up. So first of all, we're gonna finish off the couple of books that I read for the vlog that will never happen. So first is Restore Me by J.L. Seegers, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I really liked this. This was very nearly a 5-star book for me. However, this book is extremely long, and the pacing was a little bit off for me. So we are following this heroine whose husband died in a car accident 4 years ago. He was hit by a drunk driver, and she is pretty much sworn off love. And right at the beginning of the book, she is at a bar with her best friend, who happens to be her sister-in-law, and her husband's best friend and her have this like enemies relationship. They do not get along. They bicker and fight all the time. And right at the beginning of the book, he saves her from a near sexual assault. You realize that the two of them have more going on than just enemies. They have this intense chemistry. The hero has been harboring some feelings for our heroine, and you slowly kind of learn why they became enemies and all of the things that happened in their past. And our heroine and him end up striking up this semi-forbidden romance because she is extremely touch-starved. What starts off as a mutual understanding kind of grows into feelings. And really loved the characters in here. I loved them so much. I loved the romance and the chemistry between these characters. I think where this book lost me a little bit was in its length, because this book, in my opinion, it didn't need to be quite this long. I really enjoyed getting that time to sit with the characters and like feel their chemistry. That like 3/4 mark, like around the 75% mark, I was like ready for things to wrap up, and it felt like it dragged on a little bit at that point. So I needed it to be kind of condensed down just a little bit. I can totally understand why this was on so many favorites lists, because it was really great. So I am interested to read more from this author. If you saw in my February TBR, I did put the second book on my TBR. I don't think it's going to happen. That book is just as long. In fact, I think it's a little bit longer because there's also a like novella that comes after it. So I want to say that one's like 800 pages in total, which is just that's a lot of story. So I am very curious to read more from this author in the future. The next book that I read was an arc, and that was Do I Know You by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca. I listened to this on Penguin Random House Audio, so thank you so much to Penguin Random House for the audiobook. And I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I absolutely loved this author duo's first book, like a first adult romance, which was The Roughest Draft. I really loved that one. This one didn't quite live up to that for me. So in this one, we're following this couple who have been married, I think, 5 years. They're not getting along. Their relationship is suffering. They kind of act like strangers around each other. They don't know how to speak to each other. There are a lot of awkward silences, and they're struggling in their marriage. And one of the mothers gifts the couple this like all-inclusive retreat to this really fancy spa on the coast, and they decide to go there for their anniversary. But when they get there, they realize that they have 2 rooms, and our heroine decides that they are going to stay in separate rooms because she is finally willing to admit that like their relationship is not okay. And they are going to meet at the bar on their first night for a dinner. And when our heroine gets down to the bar, her husband is hanging out with this other guy who is there for this like dating event that's happening. And the guy that our hero is talking to doesn't realize that they know each other, and he goes to introduce them, and they decide to pretend that they don't know each other. And so they spend their entire anniversary essentially dating each other and trying to rekindle their romance. And I love a good Marriage on the Rocks, second chance romance. This one just didn't quite hit for me. My main issue with this one is that our main characters, particularly our heroine, drove me nuts with the amount that they were like reluctant to speak to each other. Our heroine is the one that is kind of like calling the shots on this and really forcing our hero into pretending to date each other and pretending to not know each other. And he is opening up to her, and he is trying to explain himself. And our heroine refuses to share anything. And it drove me crazy. Like I was like, you're the one that wants to do this. You're the one that's calling out everything about like you guys not communicating, all of this stuff. And then she she kept holding everything in. Her sister and her are having this like disagreement, and she refuses to tell the hero about it. And every time he tries to bring it up and like coax her into sharing something, she like clamps up and like throws it back at him. And after a while, it started to bug me because I'm like, Stu can do better. I just didn't understand why she was doing that so much. And it just started to bug me by the end because she does it until like the very end of the book. It's not like at like the halfway point or something. No, no, no. She acts like this until like the final conclusion, and that bothered me. So then I read Flawless by Elsie Silver, which is one that I have changed my rating on a bunch of times. So originally when I first read this, I gave it 5 stars, and I had vlogged this one and talked about it and everything like that. And the more that I've sat on it, the more I've lowered my rating. I'm giving this one 4 stars in the end. I did really like this book, don't get me wrong. I am adamant about not liking cowboys. Like I've talked about that a lot. I am not a small town romance girly. I don't like cowboys and farms and like all of that shit. Like I'm a city girl. Elsie Silver did win me over with this. Like I was on board. I got it. I understood. The hero in here is fantastic. I loved him a lot. I was left at the very end just being like, oh my God, that was so great. But it didn't have a lasting impact on me. Like when I think back on this book, there are a lot of things that I don't remember about this book. We're following a heroine who is part of this company. Her father owns the company, and one of their clients is this bull rider, and he needs to clean up his image, and she is kind of assigned as his babysitter, and she has to go stay with him for a little while to help clean up his image. While they're together, they end up forming this romance. And there were a couple things that I really, really loved about this book. One, I really liked our heroine, and I liked that this book didn't fall into your like typical tropes of like city girl turned farm girl. Like she wasn't like super ditzy about it. She wasn't super reluctant. It was just a very different take on that classic trope, and she very much so embraced it. And even when she was like making mistakes and showing up in like nicer boots than what she would have, it wasn't like her being snobby about it. It was just like, oh shit, I messed up. And so it was, I really liked that. I really liked the family. I think that was my favorite part, is our hero is one of 3 boys. And so he has 2 brothers, and there is kind of like a fourth, like the brother's best friend is kind of like part of their family as well. And so I really liked their brotherly dynamic. I loved the dad, like his father is so adorable. I loved them all, and I liked how much they embraced the heroine because she had to stay with them. I still hate bull riding. And all of those scenes stressed me the hell out. I don't understand. Poor little animals, like leave them be. Like that part didn't like totally do it for me, but like I get why people like that so much. Like it was very intense moments for me. And so I was stressed out, but I can see why so many people liked it. And I really liked the romance. I thought it was cute and sweet. And like I said, in the end, I'm not left feeling, it didn't elicit those emotions for me other than like the awes that I let out, because it was, I mean, really, really cute. The next one is the one DNF that I had, and I am so sorry for everyone that loves this book. It was the Tyrant Alphas Rejected Mate by Kate C. Wells. I DNF'd this at 30%. I could not get into this, and I thought this was going to be something I loved. I actually saved this one like for later in the video because I was so convinced that this was going to be a 5-star, and I didn't care for it. I wasn't getting on board with the like uber masculinity of this story, and I know that that's like part of it. There was a lot of like toxic masculinity being discussed in here, and I don't know if I wasn't at like in the right mindset or what, but I was getting so anxious about it. Like it was stressing me out. Our heroine in here is disabled. She had a serious leg injury, like because one of the other men in the pack attacked her as a child, and her leg never healed right. And so our heroine is disabled, and she deals with a lot of pain, and she has a limp and things like that. So she is treated so fucking terribly in this pack. Like like I said, it was stressing me out because women are seen as essentially like lesser beings. And the author isn't trying to say that women are lesser beings. Like, it is very much so discussing that like toxic situation. It was just, I was getting stressed out about it, and I could not continue on, because every time I would start listening to it, I would have to pause it because I was just like trying to recollect myself. And I just, after a while, it was like, I can't keep pushing through. I know that the payoff is supposed to be like amazing, but I just, like I said, I don't think I was in the right headspace or something, because I was just, I was struggling. I was struggling so hard reading this, and I just decided that move on to something else, can always continue on with it at a different time. But for now, it's a DNF. And then the last book for the Lost vlog was A Secret Service by Tel Bauer, which was supposed to be the book that I picked. And I picked this because this was one of Steph from Teacups and Tropes' favorite books of the year. So thank you, Steph, even though you're never going to see this vlog. But this was 5 stars. Oh my god, this was so good. This is probably going to be one of my favorite books of the year because Tel Bauer. But this is another like President Secret Service romance, but this is so different than his Enemies of the State one. So before I get into what this book is about, I do want to mention that there is a foreword right at the beginning of this book that Tel wrote about how this book was written before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This book also deals with that, but it was written beforehand. And so if you do purchase this book, proceeds of this book are going to Ukrainian organizations. So I just want to make that note, but major content warnings for that. So this book is following our 2 heroes. One is the President of the United States. He is pretty young, and he is an activist, and he spent the majority of his younger career like traveling the world and doing different sort of outreach things. And so he has a very different look at the world as a whole. And so he comes back, runs for the presidency, ends up winning. And on his first day at the White House, he meets his lead Secret Service agent, who is our other hero. And the two of them have this immediate spark and connection. And it is them falling for each other, but like not knowing how to make this happen or make this work. And they are really struggling with whether or not to act on their feelings. And it is the most beautiful forbidden romance. And all the while, we are flashing forward between their romance in the past and the present day, because right at the beginning of the book, our president is going off for this secret rendezvous with somebody, and a giant car explosion happens and nobody knows where the president is. And our Secret Service agent is trying to figure out the mystery. And so we are flashing between their romance and this like high suspense situation. And this book is so fucking stressful. Okay. If you are an anxious person, if you watch high action movies and you feel stressed out, do not read this book. Okay. This is intense from page 1 to the final page. Like, I was stressed. I stress ate the entire way through this book. I loved the political maneuverings and the secrets and all of the moving pieces. I loved the romance. The romance in here, absolutely amazing. But the star of the show of this book, in my opinion, is Sheridan, who is the sweetest puppy dog who needs his happily ever after. Tel Bauer needs to write me a Sheridan romance because I need this poor guy to get his happily ever after. Like, for real. Like, he deserves it. But this was so good. It was fantastic. I swear Tel Bauer can't do any wrong. All of his books are amazing. I haven't given a single book of his less than 5 stars, so highly recommend. Then the one book that I have physically is Visions of Heat by Nalini Singh. This was one of the books that was on my February TBR for Favreau Feb, and this is book 2 in the Side Changeling series, and I'm so proud of myself for finally continuing on with it. And I do have book 3 like right there because I do want to continue on with it. But this is a shifter paranormal romance urban fantasy world where there are humans, shifters, and Sais. And Sais are psychics, and they have a bunch of different affinities. And in this one, we are following is it a jaguar or leopard? We're following a jaguar shifter who's living amongst the leopards, I think. There's a bunch of different shifter people, but we're following our hero who's a shifter and our heroine who is a Sai, and she can see the future. And so she gets visions, hence Visions of Heat. and the two of them are fated mates, and she is trying to escape the very oppressive Psi environment and help out the shifters, as she's also having these really terrifying, like, dark visions for the first time ever, and you're kind of learning more about the Psis and everything like that. I really liked this. I give this 3.5 stars. It wasn't quite as fantastic as the first one. Our heroine has lived, like, in this a very isolated environment her entire life, and so her getting exposed to the shifter world was really interesting to watch. She has never really been touched or hugged or anything like that. And in this world, shifters are very much so emotional beings. And so they're all about touch. And seeing those two, like, opposing forces come together was really great. I had a good time with this one. After that was another one of my favorites, and that was The Neighbor Favor by Christina Forrest. And I have not stopped talking about how much I loved this book. I gave this 5 stars. It was so freaking good. I knew this was going to be 5 stars from, like, the first little bit that I read. So I read the first, like, I think it was like 15%, like, in a single sitting, because it is this email chain between our two main characters. So this opens up with our heroine who is on a train in New York City, and the train stops on the tracks, and it is like 97 degrees and it is stifling hot, and she starts feeling kind of woozy, and so she goes onto her phone and she is looking up her favorite author, and she realizes that he has a new website, and because of the heat she decides to email him, and mid-email she actually passes out on the train. We flash to our hero, who is this author. He wrote a book when he was like 21 years old, and he never ended up continuing on, and now he has this job as a journalist traveling the world, and he gets this email and he decides to respond to our heroine, and the first 15% of the book is their emails back and forth, and it stole my heart. Whenever an author can pull off a connection like this between emails or letters or texts, I am always blown away, because it really relies on them falling for each other as people instead of that, like, physical attraction. And so whatever this can translate into a book and be pulled off successfully, I'm always blown away. And Christina Forrest killed it. I loved this so much. After the email chains, it flashes to present day, and you slowly learn that our two main characters are living in the same apartment, and our hero has figured out who the heroine is, but the heroine has no idea who the hero is. As a ruse to get close to the hero, she is going to ask him to teach her how to date. Definitely recommend. This comes out February 28th, so it comes out super soon, so this is definitely one to have on your radar. Then I read Treble by Rilsey Adams, and Rilsey Adams is quickly becoming a favorite, like, novella author of mine. I give this one 4 stars. This was so fucking hot. Oh my god. This book, Rilsey Adams always, like, kills it with her steaminess, but damn, this book was so good. We are following this married couple that is polyamorous, and so they each date other people, and they have the most amazing communication, and their relationship is so fantastic, and their, like, romance and just everything about them. And right at the beginning of the book, our hero is on a dating site, and he starts messaging with this other woman, and this woman refuses to go on a date with him unless she gets to meet his wife, because she wants to make sure that they are both on the same page and he's not doing anything shady. And so him and his wife go on this dinner date with this other woman, and they realize that all 3 of them have this intense chemistry and attraction to each other. And for the first time, our married couple dates the same woman, and it is the 3 of them forming a throuple, and whew, it was so good. The communication is great. The chemistry is great. The steamy scenes are great. All of it was so well done. And I have to read more from this author. She has a pretty large backlist, but I am determined to get through it now because I've loved everything that I've read of hers. Then I read A Tale of Two Cities, the Valentine's Day novella by Alexandra Warren, which I also gave 4 stars, and this was the last book in the series. I have not read the New Year's Eve one yet. I will get back to reading that one eventually. But this was so good. This series is one of those series where like if I were to see this like on paper in front of me, this series shouldn't work. Like this book shouldn't work, and none of these romances should work. But Alexandra Warren she convinces me every single time. This entire romance takes place over like 2 weeks, and the main romance takes place in 48 hours. And like, that shouldn't work, like at all. I should not have been able to buy into this romance to the extent that I did, but I was in it. I was in it. This is following our heroine who slides into our hero's DMs, and our hero is this big basketball star, and for whatever reason, he responds to our heroine, invites her down to Florida to stay with him for a weekend over Valentine's Day weekend, and the two of them have this like instant connection, and it shouldn't have worked. Like as I say it out loud, I'm like, this should not work. But I loved these two so much. Their romance was so cute. The way that our hero like worships the heroine was so precious. And then like there's no third act breakup. There's no unnecessary drama. It is just the two of them falling in love. And it was so good. It was so good. I love this series so much. This is another author I want to read more of because I've loved this entire series. So I gave this one 4 stars. It was fantastic. And then the last book is the last 5-star book, and holy cow, I loved this. And that was Yours Insatiably by Veda Weiss. I have read so many of Veda Weiss books, but they have all been novellas, and this is the first 5-star I've given them, and I need to read more of their full-length novels because this was so good. I loved Feed, which is the little novella that comes before this. I loved that one. I gave that one 4 stars, but this book was so good. We are following the same characters as in Feed, so our heroine is a succubus and our hero is a mothman. They have the most amazing, amazing romance. They are working at the same company, and they have this like relationship where they butt heads all the time. Our hero loves to push the heroine's buttons, and eventually that like butting heads dynamic explodes into romance and steaminess, and their relationship is so, so good. And the way that our main characters like test each other and push each other and then eventually fall in love is just, it was great. I loved it so, so much. The Stevie seeds in here blew me away. And the ending to this book was so much more precious than what I was expecting, and I loved every single second of it. It was just, it stole my heart. I cannot wait to continue on with the rest of the series because I have read the 2 novellas that come after this, but I haven't read the full-length corresponding books. So I'm very excited to get more from this. Okay, so that is it for my recent reads. This video is so much longer than I thought it was going to be. Apparently, I was feeling rambly today. So let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know what you thought of them, if you agree or disagree with my opinions, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.